This time, David Lalloo tackles a deadly snake attack in the heart of Hull.
It's like somebody's injected acid into your finger.
The antivenom was sent by a blue light ambulance across the country.
And takes on a lethal parasitic worm.
What were the worms doing there? I don't know, it's just horrible.
While Dr Nick Beeching battles gruesome holiday souvenirs.
Once we started pulling some of these eggs out, it just left a big hole in my back.
To try and make it better, they put maggots on my foot.
What the Sun and the Daily Mail call the flesh-eating killer bug.
This crack team wages war on deadly bites and alien body invasions, battling lethal infections from around the globe. Only they stand between you and bugs, bites, and parasites. In Liverpool, the School of Tropical Medicine and the Royal treat sick and worried patients who've been exposed to tropical diseases from all over the world. And poisonous bites.
If you'd showed that to me blind, I would have said that's more in keeping with a spider bite than a scorpion sting.
David Lalloo is a veteran of over 20 years in the challenging field of tropical diseases.
Most people interested in tropical medicine are slightly different, and I'm not sure they're bonkers, but they are slightly unusual. They tend to be people who have prepared to take a few more risks than the average clinician, who is prepared sometimes to do slightly different things. It's certainly not an orthodox career.
David's knowledge is called on any time, day or night, without warning. "32-year-old Lee Reeve is from Hull. He's been a passionate snake owner for 15 years. Out of the blue, his western diamondback rattlesnake has attacked him.
People ask me why I keep snakes, because they're not like a dog, they're not companions, they're not pets, they're not something you can sit and stroke. To me, they're a piece of wilderness in my own house.
Lee holds a dangerous wild animals license, but this time he failed to follow the rules.
I was in a little bit of a rush, and rushing with venomous snakes is not a good idea. I opened his door, I hooked him out, I put him on the floor, pinned the snake's head with a snake hook. I lifted the pressure off the top of his head for no more than a split second. That was long enough for him to sink both fangs into the middle finger.
The impact was instantaneous.
It's like somebody's injected acid into your finger and then set you on fire as well.
With his fingers starting to swell horrifically, Lee rushed to his local emergency department.
It was a matter of minutes before my finger started blistering. You could actually see in real time the blister developing on the finger.
The effect of the venom is to use up the clotting proteins, and that means the blood simply won't clot, even when it needs to. That leaves patients at a real risk of severe bleeding, maybe into the head or from the gut, and unfortunately that leads to fatal consequences.
With no anti-venom in Hull, the hospital called on David Lalloo, who instructed the pharmacist on call at the Royal to rush a life-saving antidote across the country.
So it's the Crowfab antivenom, and how many vials do you require?
The unit in Liverpool is one of only 2 centres in the UK holding the vital anti-venom.
When I was rung by the NE consultant, we decided the antivenom needed to get there rapidly, so it was sent by a blue light ambulance across the country.
The anti-venom is dispatched in an emergency response car, which races to Lee over 2 hours away.
It was scary. It was a scary time.
Cases like Lee drive David in an ongoing study of snakebite in the tropics. He's one of the UK's top experts in the field. But David's just one of a crack team here, all dedicated to battling tropical killers.
Just look up for me. Eyes are still quite yellow.
Dr Nick Beeching spends his fair share of time in the tropics. He leads the team of daring doctors in the Infectious and Tropical Disease Unit at the Royal.
We're all mavericks, and most of us are quite proud of that, really. We've had a funny career path because it's, it involves having to go overseas, having to do different things. All of us, in that sense, are risk takers.
From parasitic worms to infected insect bites, Nick Beeching treats terrified travellers with unexplained, often gruesome symptoms. 20-year-old Rich Park has just returned from his perfect summer job, teaching windsurfing on the Mediterranean island of Corsica. The dream went sour when he began to suspect that an unknown creature was feasting on his flesh.
There was sort of the usual jokes going around that in a couple of days we'll slice your back open and spiders will just come crawling out. I was just loving life. You get to spend every day sort of on the beach. You work hard but also play hard.
2 weeks ago, Rich's season in the sun turned into a nightmare.
We'd gone out sort of and just had a bit of a party in the local town and whatever. Came home, slept normally, woke up to my day off just with the startings of something on my back. That was really painful, actually. A couple of my friends had also had sort of bites and things like that, and they'd had what would be a spider bite.
Certainly some of the spiders can cause very nasty, painful bites, which cause death of the skin, which goes black.
Be careful, Bo, come on, be careful, because it's gonna...
Desperate, Rich asked his friends to dig the invader out of his back. They captured their DIY surgery on camera phone.
We'd actually try just warming up pin badges and things like that and just sticking them right into the centre of it just to try and get as much of this infection out as possible. My vet friend was absolutely dying to cut it open with a hot Stanley knife and sort of see what actually came out of it.
You're just being a word. Come on.
None of it worked, and if anything, just put me through pain.
The pain and inflammation increased, and Rich now feared that the spider may have left a gruesome goodbye gift.
A friend of mine actually got a pair of tweezers. It got that bad and just started picking these sort of hard sacs out my back, which we reckon they were spider eggs.
Up close and personal version.
And then it actually turned out once we started pulling some of these eggs out, it just left a big hole in my back.
As soon as he got home, Rich contacted the team in Liverpool.
We sent them some photographs through, and yesterday they got back to me to say Richard was flying home from Corsica last night and could we bring him here this morning. But yeah, not a nice picture to see about your little boy's back.
I've dressed it every day with the hope it pulled the infection out.
OK, we need actually get me some gloves. Do you want to pop your shirt on?
Yeah.
Nick Beeching will now investigate whether Rich is right to fear he has a nest of spider's eggs on his back. Coming up, David Lalloo hopes his emergency anti-venom arrived in time for the patient.
The thought of losing a finger isn't the nicest thought I've ever had.
And turns his attention from snakebite to parasite.
The eggs are deposited in the bladder.
What were the eggs doing there? I don't know, it's this horrible thought.
The Royal in Liverpool stockpiles one of the largest amounts of anti-venom in Europe.
So it's the crowfab anti-venom.
A week ago, snake venom expert Dr David Lalloo dispatched well over half the national supply of rattlesnake anti-venom on a 200-kilometre rescue mission to a patient he's never met.
This antivenom is not to treat the adder that you get in the UK, but to treat the exotic snakes that are held both legally and illegally around the country, some of which can be quite nasty.
That anti-venom was heading for 32-year-old Lee Reeve, who'd been bitten by his pet western diamondback rattlesnake. With a friend for moral support, Lee's now back at his local hospital in Hull to find out the extent of the damage.
The thought of losing a finger isn't the nicest thought I've ever had.
Thanks.
Inside the bandage, I can feel the finger swelling up and I can feel the pus coming through from the actual bite.
What was it like then?
The bite itself, the most painful thing I've ever been through. I've never felt anything like that before.
Snakes use venom to kill and digest their prey by breaking down the flesh. For Lee, it meant severe tissue damage or necrosis and swelling of his whole arm. Lee was lucky. Snake venom can cause paralysis and bleeding that can prove fatal. David Lalloo's speedy response saved his life, but he's still in severe pain.
It's like being hit with a sledgehammer and then having hot pokers stuck through your finger and then set on fire.
Can I just have a feel of the nail? The nails are attached.
Yeah.
And straighten up. I think we'll just redress it today and I'll see you in another week and we'll see how it's going. But all of this that I was worried about before seems nice and pink, so...
It looks like my finger's going to be safe, does it?
Hopefully.
It was a mistake I made and I'm paying for that mistake. I've just got to ensure that it doesn't happen again.
The simplest advice is just not to keep venomous snakes. If you're not keeping venomous snakes, then your chance of getting a bite from a dangerous snake is nil.
Professor David Lalloo saved my life. He spent a long time advising all of the consultants that dealt with me, all of the nurses that dealt with me, and I'll always be in debt for him for that.
While the cause of Lee's troubles was obvious, not all of David Lalloo's cases are so clear-cut. A potentially deadly parasite hid inside his next patient for more than a decade. "49-year-old Janet Richardson lived in South Africa until the age of 36, growing up in a rural part of the country. A year ago, Janet went for a routine smear, which revealed parasitic eggs in her cervix.
I found out because I received a letter from a local hospital saying that I needed to go to see someone in the urology department. I then phoned my own GP because I'd initially been sent to the local hospital because I'd had some abnormal cells from a smear.
Janet was referred to doctors from the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, who diagnosed schistosomiasis.
What were the eggs doing there? I don't know, it's this horrible thought. Yeah, no, there's ghastly, yeah.
Janet has been invaded by a tiny parasitic flatworm, which burrowed deep into her internal organs, feeding on the nutrients in her blood. The adult worms mated, producing thousands of eggs, which passed to her bladder, completing the worm's life cycle.
It's quite weird, because you don't actually know what they're doing inside there, and where they're sitting, or actually what they look like. It's quite strange, yeah.
The infectious disease team at the school's well-travelled clinic have treated Janet's infection. But Dr. David Lalloo and specialist registrar Tom Fletcher want to find out if they've won the battle against her persistent parasite.
I think they just want to make sure that I definitely haven't got any eggs left. And maybe it's the remnants of what I had, and my body's still healing.
First, David Lalloo is keen to find out when and how Janet was exposed to this parasite.
I mean, do you remember swimming lots in it?
I mean, as a kid, yes. I grew up in a farming district.
It was in Eastern Cape, was it? Yeah,
yes, yeah.
Janet has her own ideas about when she caught schisto, while swimming in the South African bush 15 years ago.
That night, when we got out the water, I was unbelievably itchy. My whole body was itchy.
Some people will be aware at the time of encountering the infection in the water of this thing we call swimmer's itch. And that really just reflects the parasites going into the skin and then they will develop in the body.
David Lalloo's on a hunt to find out if he's killed off Janet's parasites once and for all, and if they've inflicted any lasting damage to her bladder.
What we need to make sure is that it's not active disease, and so we just need to screen you again and make sure that, that there's nothing that we didn't manage to eradicate last time
Okay.
round.
Janet has done a urine test, which will now reveal if David Lalloo's treatment has killed the parasites.
Hi, Jane. I think you should have had a sample on Janet Richardson this morning. OK, that's great. Thanks a lot. Cheers then. Bye. So that was negative, but it was quite low volume. So we'll just grab some blood from you as well.
Okay. I'm not very brave at all. Oh.
Janet's not got the all clear yet. To be absolutely sure she's parasite-free, David Lalloo wants her to have a blood test.
Well done.
You were actually very gentle, I must admit.
Thank you very much.
And she must do yet another urine test, this time giving a much larger sample.
So you do not have to fill these bottles. There you go. Don't worry about that.
What's more, an earlier examination of Janet's bladder at her local hospital has come up with some worrying abnormalities.
I think your bladder's supposed to be looking smooth. Mine's got these little nodules. To me, it looks like the craters on the moon.
The parasite's eggs have caused inflammation and scarring of Janet's bladder.
The biggest worry is actually then looking at what is the long-term damage to my body after maybe having it for 15 years.
Because what we know is that it happens is that the eggs are deposited in the bladder and then you get a whole load of fibrous tissue around those.
Yeah.
To establish if lasting damage has been done, David Lalloo now wants Janet to have another examination of her bladder and a biopsy.
Whether
biopsy sounds sore.
No. Don't worry about that at all.
That sounds horrible.
But I think it would just enable us to see whether it is just chronic inflammation around
where
those eggs have been sitting
probably
for years and years, since you were a kid, I suspect, actually.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
Good.
Janet's urine and blood samples later confirm that she is finally free of her parasite. David's work in Liverpool is done. Janet must now wait for an examination by a urologist at her local hospital to see whether her schisto has done any permanent damage. David's patient is one of over 2 million people worldwide infected with schistosomiasis. The disease is caused by a parasite transmitted by freshwater snails. An estimated 20,000 deaths a year result from this infection. As a clinician treating patients, David Lalloo works closely with his scientist colleagues at the School of Tropical Medicine.
One of the great things about being here is just being part of a team with all this expertise and each with their own area of interest.
Ahead of a research trip to the East African island of Zanzibar, where schistosomiasis is endemic, David's meeting with the school's resident expert.
I have. I've got a special one, actually. That's my special one, Worm Explorer, embroidered. So I get the good one.
Need to get out more, mate.
Professor Russell Stothard has been working for 20 years trying to eradicate schistosomiasis. Huge progress has been made, but there are still major challenges.
We've now shown that in many parts of Africa, anything up to 60–70% of children under the age of 3 can have active schistosomiasis.
Using DNA profiling, Professor Stothard has identified the exact species of snail which carries the schistoparasite.
The snails are very small, so here we have some which have been collected. You can see that they're very small animals. But
they're tiny.
Yeah, one snail can infect 10 to 15 people very easily.
Where are people getting infected?
Close to a school, you've generally got a small stream, so perhaps don't go swimming there.
I'm not intending to go to swimming anywhere in the schisto.
Professor Stothard is now using his DNA techniques to pinpoint where on Zanzibar the slimy culprit responsible for schisto lives.
The schisto area is really in this pocketed area here. The reason being is you have 2 different types of Balinus snails. One of them transmits the disease, restricted to this area. The other one, which doesn't transmit the disease, is restricted to these areas.
As a clinician, you're very used to treating these patients and you understand about the biology of disease and how people acquire it. But to talk to someone like Russ who's got a detailed knowledge of Zanzibar and can tell us about the differences in the snails and therefore the differences in infections that people get across, really quite a small area, I think it's fascinating.
To see how this research is used, David has flown more than 7,000 kilometers to East Africa.
I have completely lost count of the number of times I've been to Africa. This is, I think, probably the 8th or 9th time this year. Now I come back because of the research projects I run all over the place and of the work they want to do.
Coming up, David Lalloo witnesses the overwhelming impact of schistosomiasis on its home turf.
Already this one within 15 seconds is positive.
Yule mgonjwa atakeshaumwa sana, hajatibiwa, anaweza kufariki.
And Nick Beeching treats a patient's flesh-eating bacterial infection.
As soon as he took the bandage off, the smell told you that it was off.
So it's a bit damp and a little bit whiffy.
At the Royal, Liverpool, senior consultant Nick Beeching is treating Rich Park. Rich has rushed to Liverpool straight from Corsica. He's convinced that a spider has laid its eggs in the wound on his back.
Taking the dressing off, it was almost like we were pulling sort of eggs and things out of it. There was just these hard masses on the dressings, quite bloody as well.
Now is the moment of truth. Nick Beeching will reveal whether Rich's worst fears are realised.
I'm just going to peel this off a bit, as it's sore when it comes off.
It's a bit.
Just get the edges. Sorry. So when your friends looked at it, was it very black to start with, or just sort of red rings and swelling?
It was red completely around it, sort of an inch diameter. And then it was just yellow, just pus inside it.
The reality is it might well have been some kind of insect bite, and spider bites can cause, you know, quite painful damage to the skin, but they wouldn't lay eggs in the wound or anything. I don't think we need to do anything for you here, actually.
No, perfect.
Okay?
Yes, fantastic.
You'll be pleased to know you don't have to stay.
Excellent.
The so-called eggs were balls of congealed pus. Rich's friend's DIY surgery would not have helped settle the infected wound.
He probably got bitten by something. I don't know what it was. And then that caused a wound which just got infected. And it turned into a very nasty, complicated boil. This is something, when I was at school, I had one, it was called a carbuncle. And that's like a whole series of nasty boils stuck together.
Rich is determined to stick to his traveller's tale of a scary egg-laying spider.
Getting bitten hasn't really stopped me from going back to any foreign countries. It's only a little spider that bit me in the end, so.
At the Royal Liverpool, there is no let-up for top doc Nick Beeching. His next patient has been prey to a life-threatening bacterial attack.
What the Sun and the Daily Mail call the flesh-eating killer bug. That's not what we call it, but it's, I think it conveys the seriousness of the infection.
'70-year-old ex-stand-up comic William Smethurst was on holiday in Spain when he severely injured his foot while camping.
I got there, I put the tent up, it was fine, and it started to rain. And as I was going to get out the tent, I undone the zip of the tent. I was going out, I slipped and sliced my toe off. So I went to the hospital in Santander, and they bandaged it up and sent me back to the camp. And by the time I got back to England, it had gone infected.
The wound to his foot was infected with bacteria, which had eaten away at his tissue, resulting in a potentially deadly blood infection.
He had something called necrotizing fasciitis, which is a life-threatening blood poisoning infection.
As soon as he took the bandage off, the smell told you that it was off.
This severe bacterial infection has caused extensive tissue death in William's foot. The necrotizing fasciitis could have been fatal for William, who has a weakened immune system.
I'm a diabetic, so it affected me.
Over the space of 24 hours, this can proceed to be a life-threatening infection, sometimes requiring amputation of a leg or an arm as a way of treating the infection.
Straight off the plane, William was first admitted to Northwick Park Hospital near London. In an emergency operation, the team there removed most of the dead tissue, which was threatening his life.
Apparently, it was worse than I thought.
A drastic treatment was proposed to finish the job.
They asked me, have you heard of the maggot treatment?
In the constant battle to treat tropical infections, the team of doctors in Liverpool are constantly called to think outside the box.
And apart from the antibiotics, have they tried any other things like putting honey on it or anything like that?
Dr. Tim O'Dempsey has 25 years' experience fighting tropical diseases, both at home and abroad. Today, Dr. O'Dempsey is on call at the Tropical Schools Clinic for troubled travellers, many of whom are young students unaware of the risks.
What we're here to do is try and help, well, advise them about avoiding and being aware of such infections, and if they do happen to pick them up, to diagnose them and manage them appropriately. You know, people take their choices and do things anyway.
His latest case is 21-year-old philosophy student Adam Griswold. Recently returned from doing voluntary work in Africa, he's come to the clinic with his worried father, Ian. Adam's already been treated for malaria, but is still feeling grim.
The main thing really for us is to think about other possible infections he might have picked up.
Adam has spent the past 2 months in Uganda.
I was helping to build schools for a charity out there. So Monday to Friday, living with local builders and building schools. Being able to immerse yourself in a different community is a really worthwhile thing to do. And also, Uganda's a beautiful country. It's amazing.
Tim O'Dempsey wants to find out if Adam's brought home more than just happy memories.
Are you getting any other symptoms at all?
Just like very bunged up, like headachy, just couldn't really move, couldn't really do anything.
Just pains in your...
Yeah, pains like achy joints.
It's unlikely, really, that we could attribute your ongoing symptoms of fatigue and so on just to that episode of malaria, that you should have recovered from that. So what I need to do is just check you for other infections you might have been exposed to whilst in Uganda. So whereabouts were you in Uganda?
We were based in North Uganda, in Balisa district.
Did you go into any lakes, any fresh water?
Yeah, I went into Lake Victoria.
If we hear somebody's been swimming in a freshwater lake, and particularly in Africa, we'd want to investigate them, particularly in case there's a risk of schistosomiasis. So I need to do some blood tests.
Yeah.
Tim O'Dempsey will now send Adam's blood to be screened on his hunt for the bug or parasite which has laid the student low. Adam faces an anxious wait to know if it is, as Dr. O'Dempsey suspects, schistosomiasis. Travellers like Adam are often tempted to enter the cooling waters found in tropical paradises. Little do they know that this is where they're being invaded by the devastating schistosomiasis parasite. On the idyllic East African island of Zanzibar, freshwater ponds and streams form the battleground in the war against the snails that transmit schistosomiasis. David Lalloo is here to research the work being done to tackle this deadly parasite.
So, Calvin, what's going on here?
Actually, this is one of the breeding sites for the snails.
Right.
So we need to check if there are still snails around here.
The School of Tropical Medicine is working with Liverpool PhD graduate Halfan Mohammed.
Since time immemorial, this disease had been there. If you happen to be born in certain areas of these islands, the possibility of getting the disease was almost like 100%. There is no way out. So even myself, at that time, I got, infected with the schisto.
The team has a 5-year battle plan to eradicate the disease from the island. First, locate the enemy. The Balinus globosus snail, which carries the worm which infects humans, lives in slow-moving streams like this.
You need to be very careful because the water has gone deep there. So
Okay.
so when you
So-
step, you have to be very careful.
I don't want to be drowning in this lot,
Yeah.
no.
So you can look at around here, for example, you look at this. David, can you come around? You see, this is globosus.
So there's a globosus.
And there's the small ones also.
So these are the things that we're looking to find.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So there's
Yeah.
really quite a lot here.
Yeah. So this area is very dangerous.
Right.
There's a great possibility for somebody to get in, to be infected with the schisto. David, can you see, we are looking for the snails.
Yeah.
And around here, you see the people there.
Sure.
They're washing their clothes. And some of them, sometimes they get into the water and they bath.
And this is the typical way that in this area people get infected. And how does infection get into the snails?
It's mainly from somebody who is infected and urinates into the water. Urine passes with the eggs.
Right. I think anywhere you go in the tropics, it's inevitable that you can see people using water, rivers, lakes, because that's so crucial to everyday life. And they're potentially infecting themselves with schistosomiasis, but unless you deal with the fundamental problems of access to water for everybody, then that's going to continue. So that's why part of the education campaign is telling kids that they shouldn't be urinating in the water and near the water.
Yeah.
The team takes this message to the 1 million people who live on Zanzibar. In some areas, schistosomiasis is endemic, affecting around 50% of school children. Those at risk need to be identified to stop the cycle of reinfection. Today, David Lalloo and Halfan Mohammed are running a mass screening program at Magambo School to establish which youngsters are infected and then treat them. David and Halfan are testing the children's urine. If the pad at the end of the stick turns dark, it indicates the presence of blood, a telltale sign of parasites causing damage to the bladder.
I think already this one within 15 seconds is positive.
Yeah.
And even maybe this one is starting to go, but we shall see.
Shockingly, a third of this batch test positive.
So actually, there's quite a few positive just out of 20 urines there. There maybe are 6 or 7. So clearly, schistosomiasis is a big problem for these kids here.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
One little boy is desperate to know if he has schisto. 10-year-old Rama Ali Hassan wasn't in the original test group, but he's worried about the blood he's noticed in his urine. Rama lives half a kilometre away with his mother and older brother Abu. Nearby is their local bathing place.
Kama tutaenda Kiwengwa, mitoni siku nyingine, mtoni tusikoge, na tukienda koga atatusemea tupite.
Rama's mother knows all too well the terrible impact schistosomiasis could have on her sons.
Watakuwa hawendi skuli, hawawezi kwenda skuli wakati ishakuwa wanaumwa watoto wengi. Naweza kutokea kifo, yule mgonjwa atakeshaumwa sana, hajatibiwa.
The boys have first-hand experience of how horrible this disease is.
Tumbo linaniuma, natapika, na baadhi ya siku hata sitoki nje nyumbani. Nakojoa mara kwa mara, nikikojoa mkojo unaniuma, mara sikojoi tena.
Was he one of the ones that you've screened?
No. I mean, for himself, he says he was passing urine with blood. That's why he was interested to be checked.
So he told the teacher that he'd got passing urine
with blood, yeah.
And he recognised that it was a schistosomiasis.
Yeah.
Shows quite a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah, and it was kind of like showing the other students the kind of urine he's passing,
Schisto is particularly threatening to those who suffer repeated infections.
If you get chronic schistosomiasis of the bladder, you may develop bladder cancer. Of course, that can be fatal. If you get chronic disease in the liver, you may get liver fibrosis and ultimately develop cirrhosis and potentially liver failure.
Rama's urine contains blood. David Lalloo and Halfan Mohammed must now work out how bad his infection is. Coming up, Nick Beeching finds out if radical maggot therapy has worked.
Okay, let's just see what we got. So that one's on.
And Timo Dempsey has some unwelcome news for Adam.
One of the tests came back positive.
Get this all off because it's a bit...
Lead consultant Nick Beeching's patient, retired comedian William Smethurst, has been infected by the potentially deadly flesh-eating bug, necrotizing fasciitis.
Well, they do look a bit tight there. Okay, let's just see what we got. So that one's on.
In a dramatic move to cure the gruesome infection and save William's foot from possible amputation, doctors prescribed maggot therapy.
To try and make it better, they put maggots on my foot.
This species of medicinal maggot's appetite for dead and dying flesh kills the bacteria and helps stimulate new cell growth in the process.
He actually had a lot of dead skin, and the easiest way to clean that off was with maggots, which actually are very good at cleaning up dead skin and leaving the live skin behind.
For centuries, maggots provided an effective, if gruesome, means of cleaning open wounds. Even today, in cases like William's, they remain a treatment of choice. For a week, the maggots gorged themselves on William's dead and dying flesh, cleaning the wound as they did so, and growing to over a centimetre in length.
Made me famous. All the students and nurses were coming to have a look at my foot. I mean, I wasn't famous, my foot was. You know, it's a well-known foot nowadays.
Worldwide, 50,000 treatments of these miracle munchers are deployed every year.
Okay. You all right?
Can't feel it.
Okay, because that's a bit damp and a little bit whiffy, but not too bad considering what you've been through. All right?
There we go. How's it look?
It's still quite a big hole.
The maggots have done the job.
Yeah, they did a very good job. I think it'll probably be another month till it's healed up altogether.
Yeah.
But it was a life-threatening thing that you're lucky to have survived. And,
very lucky.
Best to get it all healed up now, be sorted out.
Yeah.
William's an interesting character. He obviously took it in his stride, literally, and is clearly delighted with the results. So I think he coped with it extremely well.
Consultant Timo Dempsey's patient, student Adam Griswold, has been feeling rotten since he came home from doing charity work in Uganda. Now he's back at the well-travelled clinic with his sister, Holly. Timo Dempsey has had Adam's blood, semen, stool and urine samples tested for a range of parasitic infections at the School of Tropical Medicine's state-of-the-art diagnostic lab.
I'm a little bit worried, but I'm trying not to think about it, because I think if I was thinking about there's something living inside me, when I lie down and go to bed at night, that would just keep me up, because it's not a very nice thought.
One of the tests came back positive for schistosomiasis. It's the blood test, okay? So it shows that you've been exposed. So what I want to do is give you treatment for this.
Yeah.
Okay, it's very straightforward. It's a single dose of treatment.
Okay.
And what I'll do is then see you again in about 3 to 6 months, assuming that you don't have any problems.
Yeah, thank you.
Fortunately for Adam, his parasitic infestation has been caught early.
Will it have caused any lasting damage?
It's very unusual to cause any long-term damage in people with kind of relatively light infections who are treated promptly.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That is good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yeah, happy. Thank you very much.
In terms of travellers that go to tropical countries and pick up tropical diseases, they're really just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to the burden of disease and the more important context in which these diseases occur is the context in low-resource countries.
Over 7,000 kilometres away in Zanzibar, Dr. David Lalloo is seeing a patient. 10-year-old schoolboy Rama, who's been identified as positive at a mass screening for schistosomiasis. David's now examining Rama's urine for parasitic eggs.
I've never seen a sample quite like this with that many eggs. Too many eggs to count. And you can see quite a lot of detail of the internal activity within the ova. Looking at that sample was absolutely fascinating. I've seen schisto before, seen a fair deal of schisto, but very rarely have I seen that intensity infection. And it explains why he came forward with that urine, because he'd noticed himself quite how bad it was.
Rama and his brother can't resist the lure of the parasite-infected pool near his home, which exposes them to a constant cycle of reinfection.
Nishaingia wasiwasi aliponambia kana kichocho kimerudia tena. Lakini ndo aliugua nyuma, akapelekwa hospitali, akapoa. Kwa hivi juzi tena mvua zile nadhani amekwenda kukoga tena mtoni ndo kimerudi. Toka juzi aliponambia hivyo kama mkojo wa damu mmeingia wasiwasi.
If you stop people being in contact with water, then they can't get schistosomiasis. And if you prevent kids particularly urinating in the water, then you won't get the eggs being passed into the water, and then the snails won't become infected. So I think they've had a very impressive campaign to try and get that message over.
Thanks to the screening program, Rama's schisto has been caught in time.
Nafikiria vizuri, mnatusaidia, mnakuja kutupa dawa wakati tunapoumwa, na msikatishe kuja, ni vizuri.
The infected children are measured to calculate the amount of medicine they need to kill their parasites. A single dose should clear Rama's infestation in days.
Him bringing that urine forward and subsequently getting treated could make a huge difference to him in the future.
Constant reinfection would blight Rama's life and that of thousands like him. To break the cycle, the team have their battle plan. They've identified the snail which carries the schisto parasite. They've tracked down where it lives. Now they must exterminate it.
This is a drug that will actually kill the
Kill
snails.
the snail, yeah, sure.
And it won't affect the crops and the plants that are all around.
It won't affect at all, and that's why you see the farmers, they're cultivating and they're not afraid, they're seeing us.
Oh, it's really interesting to see it.
Yeah.
So Zanzibar may be potentially the first place to eliminate schistosomiasis.
We hope so.
I think what drives many of us is seeing the diseases in the tropics and the effect of the diseases on people, and being personally involved in trying to reduce the burden of those diseases. And so it's very rewarding where we can show that our research is actually leading to a reduction in transmission of some of these diseases like schisto.
Whoever you are, wherever you go, whatever's in you, the team in Liverpool are determined to stamp out those bugs, bites and parasites.
And they are calcified, you probably see them, so therefore they urinate more often. And also, dare I say it, when they go into the water, the coolness, I mean, you always want to urinate, don't you, if you've got, and it kind of...
You're one of these people peeing in the swimming pool, aren't you?
Of course. Doesn't everybody?